The morning shift alarm echoed through the corridors of Unity Point, the largest space station ever built. Leo grabbed his toolkit and headed toward the maintenance bay. He had been working on this massive structure for 3 months now, fixing air filters and checking power systems while the most important meeting in galactic history took place around him. Unity Point stretched for miles in every direction. Its central hub housed thousands of delegates from hundreds of different alien species. They had all come here to discuss trade routes, territory boundaries, and peace agreements. For the first time in galactic history, every known intelligent species was invited to participate. Humans were the newest members of this cosmic community. Most other species still thought of them as primitive creatures who had barely learned to travel between stars. Leo did not mind this attitude. He preferred working with machines over dealing with politics anyway. The maintenance tunnels buzzed with activity as Leo made his way through them. Alien workers of various shapes and sizes moved past him, carrying supplies and equipment. Some had multiple arms, others floated instead of walking, and a few glowed with their own internal light. Leo had grown accustomed to this diversity during his time on Unity Point. His first task of the day involved repairing a faulty atmospheric processor in Section 12. The unit had been making strange noises for the past week, and today someone had finally reported it. Leo climbed through the access hatch and began examining the internal components. The processor served one of the diplomatic dining halls. Through the maintenance vents, Leo could hear the sounds of conversation from many different species. Their voices created a strange musical pattern as they spoke in their native languages. Universal translators helped them communicate, but Leo had learned to recognize the emotional tones even without understanding the words. 2 hours later, Leo finished the repair. The atmospheric processor hummed smoothly once again, cycling clean air through the dining hall above. He gathered his tools and checked his work schedule. His lunch break would start in 30 minutes, giving him enough time to complete one more small task. The next repair involved a lighting system in Corridor 7. Several panels had stopped working, leaving the hallway dimmer than regulation standards required. Leo replaced the faulty circuits quickly and efficiently. He had performed this type of repair hundreds of times during his career. When lunchtime arrived, Leo made his way to the public dining area. Unity Point had several restaurants and cafeterias, but most were reserved for specific species or diplomatic ranks. The public dining area welcomed everyone, though most aliens chose to eat elsewhere. Leo carried a simple brown bag containing his lunch. He had packed 2 sandwiches, some fruit, and a container of water. His accommodation unit had basic food preparation facilities, and he preferred making his own meals instead of buying expensive station food. The dining area occupied a vast space with transparent walls offering views of distant stars. Tables and seating areas were arranged to accommodate different alien body types. Some species required elevated platforms, others needed specialized chairs, and a few preferred to remain standing while they ate. Leo found an empty table in the human section and unpacked his lunch. He pulled out a technical manual he had been studying and propped it open beside his food. The book covered advanced power distribution systems, and Leo wanted to understand the theory behind the repairs he performed daily. Most of the alien delegates sat in clearly defined groups based on their species and political importance. The most powerful civilizations occupied raised platforms in the center of the dining area. Less influential species sat at standard tables around the edges. Humans had been assigned to the lowest level, near the back wall. Leo did not pay attention to these social arrangements. He focused on reading about plasma conduit configurations while eating his first sandwich. The technical diagrams required careful study, and he made notes in the margins with a small pencil. A sudden change in the dining hall's atmosphere made Leo glance up from his book. Conversations had grown quieter, and many aliens were looking toward the main entrance. A group of tall, elegant beings was entering the dining area, led by someone who commanded obvious respect and attention. The newcomers belonged to the Stellari Empire, one of the most advanced civilizations in known space. Their technology surpassed human capabilities by thousands of years, and their territory included dozens of star systems. They rarely interacted directly with younger species like humanity. The Stellari leader was female, wearing flowing robes that seemed to shift color as she moved. Geometric patterns decorated her pale blue skin, and her large eyes held an intelligence that made humans feel insignificant by comparison. Leo recognized her as Princess Nira from the diplomatic briefings all station workers had received. Princess Nira's security detail moved ahead of her, scanning the dining area and gesturing for other aliens to move aside. Several species immediately vacated their tables, bowing respectfully as the Stellari delegation passed. The princess would obviously require the best seating area, with appropriate space for her retinue. Leo returned his attention to his technical manual. A section about energy feedback loops had confused him earlier, and he wanted to understand the concept before returning to work. He continued eating his sandwich while studying the diagrams and equations. The sound of approaching footsteps made several humans at nearby tables stand up quickly. They gathered their belongings and moved toward the exit, following the example of other species who had cleared the way for Princess Nira. Soon Leo remained alone in the human section, still absorbed in his reading. A Stellari security officer approached Leo's table and spoke in the universal language. "Human worker, you must relocate immediately. This area is now reserved for Princess Nira of the Stellari Empire." Leo looked up from his book and glanced around the dining area. He saw empty tables everywhere, including several elevated platforms that would better suit someone of royal status. "There are many other tables available," he said politely. "Would one of those work better?" The security officer's expression showed surprise at this response. Most beings immediately obeyed Stellari commands without question. "Princess Nira has chosen this location. You will move now." Before Leo could respond, a clear voice spoke from behind the security officer. "Thank you, Captain Vex. I will handle this myself." Princess Nira stepped forward, studying Leo with curious eyes. Her presence seemed to make the air around them shimmer slightly. "You are reading while eating," she observed. "This is unusual behavior." Leo nodded and held up his technical manual. "I'm trying to learn about plasma conduit systems. The theory is more complicated than the practical application." He gestured to an empty chair across from him. "You're welcome to join me if you'd like. There's plenty of space." The princess's security detail tensed at this casual invitation. Speaking directly to royalty without permission violated numerous diplomatic protocols. Captain Vex moved to intervene, but Princess Nira raised a hand to stop him. "You invite me to sit at your table," she said slowly. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, you're Princess Nira from the Stellari Empire," Leo replied. "I recognize you from the station briefings. You're here for the Peace Summit, right?" He closed his technical manual and gave her his full attention. "I'm Leo, by the way. I work maintenance on the station." Princess Nira stared at him for several seconds without speaking. Her retinue waited nervously for her response. Finally, she moved toward the empty chair Leo had indicated. "I will sit with you, Leo the maintenance worker." Captain Vex started to object, but the princess silenced him with a sharp look. She settled into the chair across from Leo, her robes arranging themselves gracefully around her. Her security detail took positions at nearby tables, clearly uncomfortable with this unusual situation. "You were studying while eating," Princess Nira said. "Why do you combine these activities?" Leo reopened his technical manual and showed her the page he had been reading. "I only have 30 minutes for lunch, and I want to understand this material before my shift ends." If I can figure out the theory, I might be able to prevent problems instead of just fixing them after they happen. The princess examined the diagrams and equations in Leo's book. Her people had mastered this technology millennia ago, but she found his approach interesting. You seek to improve your knowledge during personal time. This dedication is admirable. Learning new things keeps work from getting boring, Leo explained. He unwrapped his second sandwich and realized Princess Nira had no food. Without thinking, he slid half of the sandwich across the table toward her. Are you hungry? I packed extra today. Princess Nira stared at the offered food as if it were an explosive device. Her security detail shifted nervously, and several nearby aliens turned to watch this unprecedented scene. In Stellari culture, sharing food with royalty required complex ceremonies and formal permissions. Yet this human offered his simple meal with casual generosity. You give me your food, Princess Nira said carefully. What do you expect in return? Leo looked confused by the question. Nothing. You don't have anything to eat, and I made too much. It's just a sandwich. He pulled out a piece of fruit and placed it beside the sandwich. I have fruit too, if you prefer that. The princess continued staring at the offered food. Her people measured every interaction through political calculations and strategic advantages. They never acted without considering potential benefits or consequences. This human's behavior made no sense within her understanding of civilized society. Your gesture could be interpreted as an insult, she said. Offering common food to royalty suggests we are equals. Aren't we? Leo asked genuinely. I mean, we're both people sitting at the same table, eating lunch. The food might be simple, but it's clean and tastes good. He took a bite of his remaining sandwich half. Besides, I don't know much about royal protocol. I just know it's polite to share when someone doesn't have any food. Princess Nira reached across the table and carefully picked up the sandwich half. She examined it closely, noting the bread, vegetables, and protein that Leo had assembled. Simple ingredients, but prepared with obvious care. She took a small bite, and her eyes widened slightly at the unexpected flavors. This is pleasant, she admitted. The combination of textures and tastes creates a satisfying experience. She took another bite, larger this time. Your people eat this type of food regularly? Sandwiches are pretty common, Leo confirmed. They're easy to make and carry, plus you can put different ingredients together depending on what you like. He gestured toward the fruit. Try the apple too. I grew it in my garden back on Earth before coming here. The princess picked up the apple and turned it over in her hands. The red skin gleamed under the dining hall's lights, and she could detect a sweet fragrance. You grew this yourself? My family has a small farm, Leo explained. We grow fruits and vegetables for the local community. I brought some dried fruits and preserved foods with me to the station, stuff that reminds me of home. He smiled at the memory. My mother always said sharing food was the best way to make friends. Princess Nira bit into the apple, and juice ran down her chin. She dabbed at it with a napkin, surprised by the fruit's intense sweetness and crisp texture. Stellari food was typically processed into uniform nutrients, optimized for health and efficiency. This natural fruit provided a completely different eating experience. Your mother sounds wise, the princess said. Food sharing creates bonds between individuals, even across species barriers. She paused thoughtfully. Though most civilizations use such gestures for political advantage. Maybe, Leo agreed. But I think my mom meant something simpler. When you share what you have, you're showing that you care about someone else's well-being. It doesn't have to be about politics or getting something back. They continued eating in comfortable silence. Leo returned to studying his technical manual, occasionally pointing out interesting diagrams to Princess Nira. She found herself genuinely curious about human engineering approaches, which seemed to prioritize practical solutions over theoretical perfection. Other aliens in the dining area watched this unprecedented scene with amazement. A human maintenance worker was casually sharing lunch with one of the most powerful beings in known space. Princess Nira appeared relaxed and engaged, asking questions about Leo's work and nodding thoughtfully at his answers. Captain Vex repeatedly checked his chronometer, clearly hoping this bizarre interaction would end quickly. The other Stellari delegates had taken seats at a nearby elevated platform, but they kept glancing toward their princess with obvious confusion. Royal protocols did not cover situations like this. "Your technical knowledge is more extensive than I expected," Princess Nira commented as Leo explained a complex repair procedure. "Human engineering education must be quite thorough." "We have good schools," Leo agreed. "But most of what I know comes from experience and asking questions. The older workers taught me a lot when I was starting out, and I try to do the same for newer people now." "You teach others without compensation?" "Of course. If someone wants to learn, why wouldn't you help them? Besides, when everyone understands the systems better, work gets easier for everyone." Leo closed his technical manual as his lunch break neared its end. "Plus, teaching helps me understand things better too." Princess Nira finished the last of her apple and carefully folded the napkin Leo had provided. She had learned more about human nature in 30 minutes than months of diplomatic briefings had taught her. These beings operated from principles that her people had abandoned long ago in favor of calculated efficiency. "I must return to my diplomatic duties," she said, standing gracefully. Her security detail immediately moved to escort positions, relieved that this unusual encounter was ending. Leo stood as well, gathering his empty lunch containers and technical manual. "Thanks for the company, Princess Nira. It was nice having someone to talk with during lunch." As Leo prepared to leave, Princess Nira moved closer to him. The dining hall's background noise seemed to fade as she leaned forward and spoke quietly near his ear. "You're different," she whispered. Leo smiled and nodded. "Yeah, I've always been a bit odd. More interested in how things work than in normal social stuff." He shouldered his tool kit. "Thanks for sharing lunch with me. Maybe I'll see you around the station." With that simple farewell, Leo walked toward the dining hall exit, already thinking about his afternoon repair schedule. He had no idea that his casual kindness had just planted a seed that would grow into something far larger than either of them could imagine. Princess Nira watched him leave, her mind racing with new questions and possibilities. In 30 minutes, a human maintenance worker had challenged everything she thought she knew about civilization, power, and the nature of intelligent beings. The whispered words she had spoken carried a weight that Leo had completely missed. When she said he was different, she meant his entire species possessed something her advanced civilization had lost somewhere along their path to technological supremacy. As her security detail surrounded her for the return to diplomatic duties, Princess Nira found herself looking forward to discovering what other surprises humanity might hold. The Peace Summit had suddenly become far more interesting than she had anticipated. Princess Nira returned to her diplomatic quarters with her mind full of questions. The encounter with Leo had lasted only 30 minutes, but it challenged everything she understood about primitive species and social hierarchies. She dismissed her security detail and activated her private research terminal. The Stellari database contained detailed files on every species attending the Peace Summit. Princess Nira accessed the human cultural analysis reports, expecting to find explanations for Leo's unusual behavior. According to her advisors, humans were a young species driven by basic survival instincts and tribal competition. The first report described human society as chaotic and inefficient. Their governments changed frequently through primitive voting systems instead of logical hereditary succession. They wasted resources on entertainment and artistic pursuits that served no practical purpose. Most concerning, they showed dangerous tendencies toward emotional decision-making over rational calculation. Princess Nera frowned as she read these assessments. They did not match her observation of Leo at all. He had been thoughtful, curious, and genuinely kind without any obvious motive. She decided to conduct her own research through direct observation. The next morning, Princess Nera informed Captain Vex that she wanted to tour Unity Point's operational areas. Her official reason involved understanding station security systems, but her real goal was to observe more human workers in their natural environment. They began in the main engineering section, where teams from multiple species worked together to maintain the station's complex systems. Princess Nera watched human technicians collaborating with alien engineers, sharing tools and knowledge freely. When a young Zephyrian worker struggled with a difficult repair, a human supervisor named Anna patiently explained the procedure without showing any impatience. The human teaches skills to a competitor species, Captain Vex observed disapprovingly. This weakens their position in the job market. Princess Nera said nothing, but she noticed that Anna's team completed tasks faster and with fewer errors than groups where workers hoarded knowledge. The human approach seemed to create efficiency rather than weakness. In the medical bay, Princess Nera witnessed human doctors treating patients from a dozen different species. They showed equal care and attention to everyone, regardless of the patient's homeworld or political importance. A human nurse named Ben spent extra time helping an elderly Gordian delegate who had difficulty understanding the medical instructions. "Why do your people help other species so readily?" Princess Nera asked Dr. Sarah Chen, the human medical supervisor. Dr. Chen looked surprised by the question. "Because they need help, and we can provide it. Isn't that reason enough?" She gestured toward the busy medical bay. "Pain is pain, regardless of what species feels it. We became doctors to reduce suffering wherever we find it." That evening, Princess Nera attended a cultural exchange event in one of Unity Point's recreation areas. Different species had set up displays showing their art, music, and traditional foods. The human booth attracted large crowds because they were giving away free samples of Earth cuisine and teaching alien visitors how to prepare simple dishes. A human named David was demonstrating bread-making techniques to a group of fascinated crystalline beings. Their species consumed only processed minerals, but they seemed genuinely interested in understanding human food culture. David answered their questions enthusiastically, even though the knowledge would never benefit him directly. "You share your cultural knowledge without requiring payment," Princess Nera commented when David finished his demonstration. "Knowledge belongs to everyone," David replied cheerfully. "The more we understand each other's cultures, the better we can work together. Besides, teaching is fun. I love seeing how excited people get when they learn something new." Princess Nera spent the next several days observing human behavior throughout Unity Point. She saw maintenance workers like Leo helping alien colleagues with technical problems. She watched human diplomats yielding their speaking time to less confident species during committee meetings. She observed human children in the station's school areas sharing their supplies with young aliens whose families had brought insufficient materials. Each observation contradicted the official reports about human nature. Instead of being primitive and selfish, humans consistently demonstrated advanced social cooperation and empathy. They seemed to operate from a fundamental assumption that all intelligent beings deserved respect and assistance. On the fourth day of her research, Princess Nera encountered Leo again in a maintenance corridor. He was helping a team of Aquarian workers repair a water recycling system that had malfunctioned in their residential section. The Aquarians needed specific humidity levels to remain healthy, and the broken system threatened their well-being. Leo had volunteered to work extra hours without additional pay to fix the problem quickly. He crawled through narrow access tunnels that were designed for smaller beings, checking connections and replacing damaged components. His uniform was soaked with condensation, and he looked exhausted, but he continued working until the system functioned properly. "Thank you, Leo," the Aquarian team leader said gratefully. "Our families will be safe because of your help." "No problem," Leo replied, wiping sweat from his face. "I know how scary it can be when life support systems fail. Glad I could get it working again." Princess Nira waited until the Aquarians left before approaching Leo. He was gathering his tools and preparing to return to his regular duties, even though his shift had ended 2 hours earlier. "You worked beyond your required time," she observed. "Your supervisors did not order this extra effort." Leo looked up and smiled when he recognized her. "Oh, hi Princess Nira. How are you doing?" He secured his tool kit and stretched his aching back. Yeah, the Aquarians really needed this fixed fast. Their kids were starting to get sick from the wrong humidity levels. "But you receive no additional compensation for this work," Princess Nira pressed. "Why sacrifice your personal time?" Leo considered the question as they walked together down the corridor. "I guess because I can help, and they can't fix it themselves. It's not really about money or anything like that. It's just the right thing to do." "The right thing to do," Princess Nira repeated slowly. "You make moral decisions based on abstract principles rather than practical benefits. Doesn't everyone?" Leo asked, genuinely curious. "I mean, we all try to do what's right, don't we? Help people when they need it, share what we have, treat others the way we want to be treated." Princess Nira realized that Leo truly believed all intelligent species operated from these same basic principles. He had no idea that most civilizations abandoned such ideals as they advanced technologically and politically. His assumption of universal goodness was both naive and profound. That night, Princess Nira reviewed the peace summit negotiations that had been occurring while she conducted her human research. The talks had reached a critical deadlock over territorial disputes and resource allocation. 3 major alliances had formed, each demanding advantages that the others refused to accept. The Stellari Empire led the technological alliance, claiming superior rights based on their advanced capabilities. The Warrior Coalition argued for territorial control based on military strength. The Trade Federation wanted resource distribution based on economic contributions. Each group saw compromise as weakness and cooperation as surrender. Smaller species like humanity had been largely ignored during these negotiations. Their opinions carried little weight because they lacked the military, technological, or economic power to enforce their preferences. The summit was heading toward failure, with each alliance threatening to withdraw rather than accept unfavorable terms. Princess Nira studied the proposed agreements and realized that none of them addressed the fundamental problem. Every species was approaching the negotiations from a position of self-interest, trying to maximize their own advantages while minimizing others' gains. This approach guaranteed conflict and instability. But what if there was another way? What if the negotiations were guided by the principles she had observed in human behavior? What if decisions were made based on what was right rather than what was profitable or powerful? The idea seemed impossible at first. Galactic politics had operated on power dynamics for thousands of years. Changing such fundamental assumptions would require unprecedented cooperation and trust. Yet Princess Nira had seen humans demonstrate exactly these qualities in their daily interactions. 3 days before the summit's final session, Princess Nira requested a private meeting with the human diplomatic delegation. Ambassador Williams and his team were surprised by this unprecedented request. The Stellari Empire rarely acknowledged smaller species, let alone sought their input on major decisions. "Your Highness," Ambassador Williams said nervously, "we're honored by your attention. How can humanity serve the Stellari Empire?" "I want to understand your people's approach to conflict resolution," Princess Nira said directly. "How do humans settle disputes between different groups?" The ambassador looked confused by this question. Well, we try to find solutions that work for everyone involved. We look for common interests and build agreements that address the most important needs of each side. Even when one group is more powerful than the others. Especially then, Ambassador Williams replied. When there's a power imbalance, the stronger party has a responsibility to protect the weaker ones. Otherwise, you don't really have peace, just temporary submission. Princess Nera leaned forward with interest. Explain this concept further. Why should the powerful protect the weak rather than exploit their advantages? Because exploitation creates resentment and eventual rebellion, the ambassador explained. But more than that, it's just wrong to use strength to hurt others. Every being deserves dignity and fair treatment, regardless of their military or technological capabilities. These words echoed the principles Princess Nera had observed in human workers throughout Unity Point. Their species seemed to genuinely believe that moral behavior created better outcomes than ruthless efficiency. She decided to test this theory on the largest possible scale. On the final day of the Peace Summit, Princess Nera requested permission to address the full assembly. Her status as Stellari royalty guaranteed her an audience, though most delegates expected a standard speech about technological superiority and imperial interests. Instead, Princess Nera stood before the gathered representatives and spoke about her observations of human behavior. She described their approach to cooperation, their willingness to help others without expectation of reward, and their assumption that all beings deserved equal respect and consideration. I propose that we adopt human principles for resolving our current deadlock, she announced to a stunned audience. Let us make decisions based on what is right rather than what is powerful. Let us seek solutions that benefit all species rather than advantages for the few. The reaction was immediate and intense. Representatives from the major alliances protested that such idealism was naive and impractical. They argued that power dynamics were natural law, and that attempting to ignore them would lead to chaos and weakness. But Princess Nera had anticipated these objections. She invited Leo and other human workers to join the assembly and demonstrate their problem-solving approaches. She asked them to examine the territorial and resource disputes that had deadlocked the negotiations. Leo and his colleagues studied the issues with fresh eyes, unbiased by political calculations or power considerations. They proposed creative solutions that shared resources fairly, established cooperative governance structures, and created mutual defense agreements that protected smaller species while respecting larger ones' legitimate interests. Your proposals lack enforcement mechanisms, objected General Krex of the Warrior Coalition. What prevents stronger species from violating these agreements? The same thing that prevents humans from violating agreements with each other, Leo replied simply. We keep our word because breaking promises is wrong, and because cooperation works better than conflict in the long run. The assembly erupted in debate. Some delegates ridiculed human naivety, while others found themselves intrigued by approaches they had never considered. Princess Nera watched the discussions with growing satisfaction as more species began to see possibilities rather than problems in the human proposals. Over the following hours, a remarkable transformation occurred. Species that had been enemies for generations began to consider collaborative solutions. The promise of shared benefits and mutual protection appealed to civilizations that were tired of constant competition and conflict. By evening, a modified version of the human proposals had gained majority support. The new agreements established humanity as neutral mediators for future disputes, recognizing their unique perspective and commitment to fairness. Other species would provide technological and military protection for human worlds in exchange for their diplomatic services. As the assembly concluded with signing ceremonies and celebration, Princess Nera found herself back in the same dining area where everything had started. Leo was sitting at the same table, eating lunch and reading his technical manual just as he had a week earlier. She approached and sat across from him, just as she had before. Leo looked up and smiled with the same genuine warmth he had shown their first meeting. "Hey, Princess Nira. How did your summit meetings go? Did everything work out okay?" Princess Nira realized that Leo had no idea his simple act of kindness had influenced galactic history. He had continued his maintenance work while diplomats redesigned interstellar civilization around principles he demonstrated unconsciously every day. "The meetings concluded successfully," she said, accepting half a sandwich when Leo offered it once again. "We achieved something unprecedented, actually. Your people will play an important role in galactic affairs going forward." Leo nodded politely while taking a bite of his sandwich. "That sounds good. Humans usually do pretty well when we get the chance to help out." He gestured toward his technical manual. "I've been learning about quantum field generators this week. Fascinating stuff, though the math is pretty complicated." As they shared their simple meal, Princess Nira reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A maintenance worker's casual generosity had revealed truths that centuries of political analysis had missed. Sometimes the most profound wisdom came from the most ordinary actions. "Leo," she said as their lunch concluded, "when we first met, I told you that you were different. Do you remember what you thought I meant?" Leo grinned sheepishly. "I figured you meant I was weird compared to other humans. You know, more interested in machines than people, eating alone while reading technical books." Princess Nira leaned closer, just as she had before, and whispered near his ear. "You're different because your entire species understands something the rest of us forgot. You remember that being intelligent means caring about others, not just being clever." This time, Leo's expression showed he understood her words carried deeper meaning. He looked around the dining hall, noting the mixed groups of species eating together peacefully for the first time in anyone's memory. "I think maybe we just got lucky," he said quietly. "We learned early that working together makes everything better. It's not really wisdom, just common sense." Princess Nira smiled as she stood to leave. In Leo's mind, sharing food and helping others was common sense. In her mind, this represented the highest form of civilization. Perhaps the difference between these perspectives explained why humanity would now guide the galaxy toward a better future. As she walked away, Princess Nira felt grateful for the simple maintenance worker who had taught an entire galaxy the true meaning of being different.